Welcome, everyone, to UnSpun. What is this, Joe? Episode number 54, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, so today we're here with Nino Teaoneaux. We're going to be talking about the punk rock scene and its ties into, well, pretty much everything we've already been exposing on the 60s counterculture, etc. And you'll have to excuse me, folks. I've been playing around with new mic positions. I'm not sure if I like it or not. But anyways, so last week we had Dr. Hans Utter on, and we discussed Allen Ginsberg. Would you folks believe that the punk rock scene actually stems right out of the Greenwich, New England, New York area, with Ginsberg and William Burroughs, etc. So anyway, Nino, we're happy to have you on, and we also we're going to have John Adams on, who's also been covering this, and Mark Devlin out in the UK has been covering this topic, and so I'm glad to have you on. It's just so vast, trying to crack one more aspect of this massive psyop, so it's good to see other people taking on fringe aspects of this research and delving into it and realizing that there's far more there than even we had found in our initial exposures, such as with Hans last year in music, mind control, and psychobiology. So Nino, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Well, where would you like to begin? How about we start off, you had emailed a definition of the word punk earlier. So why don't we start off with the word punk, and we'll go from there.
Sounds good. We have a couple different definitions, but the primary one for the conversation at hand, and I didn't know this. It's all new to me since I broke these research barriers. But one of the definitions is a young man used as a homosexual partner, especially in prison.
Wow.
Yeah, that kind of speaks for itself. And we think about how these terms just come into our lexicon and who brings them into our lexicon. And we have these original punkers, which punk does directly manifest from beat poets.
Well, and in your definitions of punks here, you also have often an aggressive or violent young man, an inexperienced young person, a cowardly or weak young man, and then music, a punk rocker. I mean, that says a lot right there.
It does.
But, it's to punk someone, to humiliate someone. So they're getting punked. They're being humiliated for following the punk rock scene. Do you see the double flip there? To dupe or deceive, to play a practical joke on. So they're getting punked. Ironically, punk is another name for a mushroom, too. Dry wood, and we've got that in ethnomycology research. Who knows if that's valid, because it comes out of Gordon Wasson, so maybe he faked it back to punk, to these whole things. But it goes back into, Joe, help me out here. What's that guy that Wasson was interested in that I took photos of, at the Huntington Library? It was part of Shakespeare's poems and stuff. I'm going to have to open. What's that? The little guy sitting on the mushroom.
What is
you know who I'm talking about.
Of course, yeah.
Puck, yeah. So I wonder if there's a relation there from Puck and punk, etc. But I'm really interested in your analyses of the definitions here, because it's so revealing in and of itself. Here is another good one for somebody who likes to identify themselves as a punk rocker: an inferior, rotten, or worthless person or thing. Worthless articles collectively. A petty criminal or hoodlum.
I had a question for Nino. Nino, do you have any understanding of how the term actually got tagged onto a movement?
Yeah, it came from, let me pull that up on the database here. It came from, let me see here, Legs McNeil, and they just kind of, I feel it's another one of those examples of jamming imagery into the lexicons and whatnot. So it came from Legs McNeil, and he was with Punk Magazine, Spin Magazine. He's worked for Vice Magazine. So
okay, but so for there have been a Punk Magazine. So he coined it before Punk Magazine, and then worked for Punk Magazine, or
yeah,
okay,
yeah, and like a parallel thought that I was going to jam in here with this is, I was listening to Hans, your most recent interview with Hans, and he was reading Howl, and in like early in the poem they used the word hipsters too, and I was like, that rang a bell. And to me, hipsters is the same as punk. And then if you look in our current lexicon of what a hipster is, they manifested the word hipsters that we have now back then. They manifested punk that we have now back then, and they've been kind of manipulating words and labeling groups of people the whole time. And like I said, that just struck me listening to Hans read the first excerpts of Howl when I checked out your interview yesterday. So I was like, oh, that's an epiphany right there. Hipsters, punk, it's just labels that are being put in there. And then when you analyze punk and see actually who, that all of the beat poets that are tied intimately with the movement were like homosexuals, alleged pedophiles, members of NAMBLA, it becomes kind of a scary picture to start to move forward with.
So basically we're looking at the exact same group of people that started punk as the rest of the scene. And of course, William Burroughs and Allen Ginsberg, we discussed Howl last week, as you just mentioned. We did the series week before last exposing Allen Ginsberg and all of these guys, Jack Kerouac, William Burroughs, Joyce Glassman, who's Daniel Pinchbeck's mom, out of the Greenwich Village MK Ultra team out of New York. And then so essentially this the pedophile William Burroughs is the godfather of punk, and as well as the godfather of the ayahuasca scene, etc. today.
Yeah. Yeah, and him and Ginsberg are linked with the Yage letters that I learned from you and your research. And yeah, like these guys are, it's a completely contained little unit once you start unraveling it, and they're all
right. So, well, tell us, how do Burroughs and Ginsberg and Sinclair and these guys all go into and kick off the punk scene, and how does it bleed out from there?
Well, they're different approaches for different poets. So I'll start with Ginsberg, since we're talking about him. And for Ginsberg and Burroughs, they have a similar line, and I would like to label the Hotel Chelsea out of New York as like a nest of all of this. Hotel Chelsea's had many punk rockers and counterculture people living there. They've had people I've heard from you, like Arthur C. Clarke lived there, and he wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey there. Madonna lived there. Just tons and tons of people have lived there. Occultist, Harry Everett Smith, Ginsberg. And again, most...
Well, yeah, and occultist Harry Everett Smith kicked off the whole folk music scene, and he's one of the key people that Hans exposed with me in the Music, Mind Control, and Psychobiology series.
Absolutely, and I have new links to corroborate everything you guys have displayed, just on a different spectrum of culture.
All right, well, let's go.
Okay, so with I'd like to start with Ginsberg, and I'm just going to tell some...
if you want to share your brain database on screen and just walk us through like you see me doing, that's fine.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull it up here. And what I'm going to do is just talk about some of the connections between Ginsberg and punk rockers, and I'm going to tell a tale specifically of a punk rocker / hardcore punk rocker who was affiliated with Ginsberg since the age of 1 year old. I'll start there. So if I start to sound discombobulated, this is a crazy story, so I'll do my best to keep it coherent. So Allen Ginsberg, I found out he and his lover Peter Orlovsky shared a female lover, and her name was Denise Mercedes, and she's about 4th from the top on the left there. And she was
just go ahead and click on it if you want to show anything.
So okay, wait a minute. So did that change for you guys?
Yep, you got it.
Okay. Yeah. So Denise Mercedes was in a band called the Stimulators, and I found through research, one book was called Beat Punks, that she was lovers to Peter Orlovsky and Ginsberg, and she was in a punk band called the Stimulators. Another member of that band was a young man at the time. I believe he was 11. His name was Harley Flanagan. Okay. And I found out that Harley Flanagan, let me pull him up here. Harley Flanagan was tied to Ginsberg because his mother Rosebud Falupatet was lifelong friends with Ginsberg. They were so close, in fact, that she was at his deathbed, and she was by his side when he died. So this family has been with Ginsberg for a long time. So according to the writings I've read, Ginsberg acknowledges knowing Harley since the age of 1, and they lived on a farm together. So with Harley, we find he is in a band called the Stimulators, of which his aunt was a member of and was lovers to Orlovsky and Ginsberg. And again, he was in this band at the age of 11. So he goes on, some time passes, and he goes to what becomes another band called the Cro-Mags. And the Cro-Mags are known in hardcore punk rock. There's a tag to add on to the punk rock is hardcore. They're known as a catalyst for a sound change. Now, this band is completely fascinating. We find that in addition to Harley, there's a gentleman named John Joseph, and forgive me, but I'm going to go into tangents occasionally, but John Joseph's in this band as well. And John Joseph came from a background of being raped and molested in foster homes, whatnot. He joined the Krishna movement early. He was an example of some of his exploits as a Krishna, where he dressed up as a homeless Santa Claus in a wheelchair and begged for money. And he got like thousands of dollars and gave it to the Krishna people. So this is how involved and how wrapped up John Joseph's mind was with his affiliation with the Krishna people. In addition to that, I found an interview with John Joseph when I was doing research on a totally different section of punk rock. And in this interview, he acknowledges knowing a guy named Joel Rifkin, and Joel Rifkin is a serial killer. And I was like, that is incredibly strange. Joel Rifkin, and I don't want to go too far off of it, but I do feel this is worth mentioning because this directly attaches to some of Dave McGowan's work. Joel Rifkin killed a woman named Tiffany Bresciani, and she was a drug addict who dated a singer in a band called Reagan Youth. Now, why I bring up Joel Rifkin is in my research on Joel Rifkin, I found out that Joel Rifkin was landscaper to Sophia Casey. And Sophia Casey is the widow of William. Joel Rifkin.
That didn't take long.
Yeah, so Joel Rifkin, serial killer, is the landscaper for William Casey's widow before he goes on his murder sprees. And he came from a organization called the Planting Fields Foundation, and it was ran by a gentleman named Owen Smith, who was a very close family member. I didn't figure out what family member to William Casey, but he ran the foundation that Rifkin was doing landscaping at.
For those who don't know, just to interrupt you there for a second, William Casey is the former head of the CIA.
Yeah, yeah, it's the head of the CIA, Iran-Contra, all kinds of things that I didn't list because it just falls under the umbrella of the CIA, and it's an incredibly tangled web. But just on the side note, so Rifkin was introduced to the widow Casey from Owen Smith, who is a close family member, and when you analyze Owen Smith, he's friends with people like Peter Schweitzer, and he's also an attendee of the Institute of World Politics. And in my research, I'm jumping the shark and kind of doing some speculation. These schools, I think, are spook schools. I think that I'm pretty safe in saying a lot of these schools are spook schools like this, the Institute of World Politics.
I don't know if that would be pulling the fawns and jumping the shark, though, you know.
So that's our first little digression right there. Off of Ginsberg, we have Harley Flanagan in a band, and again, this guy knows the serial killer. The serial killer worked for William Case's widow. You know, this stuff is mind-blowing to me. So back to the Cro-Mags and back to Harley Flanagan. Let me pull this up here. So, and again, this is an incredibly tangled web. Harley Flanagan is in the Cro-Mags band, and their theme is Krishna. Vegetarians and Krishna. And that becomes what's known as Krishnacore. And so there becomes a hardcore punk genre where Krishna bands with Krishna themes and actual Krishnas in the band go around and play shows. And they were the forerunners of that. They're also, Harley is also credited with being the first American skinhead. He is credited with being the first American skinhead.
Wow.
And the skinheads came out of New York. And he came over from Ireland, which is a theme I'm running across too. And I can't remember the name right now.
I would put the skinheads below him then, since he created it, you know.
Well, he brought it. He created the American ones or got it manufactured, but it was going on in the UK and Ireland first.
Ah, okay, got it.
So he brought it over, and what he did was he got his head shaved in Ireland, and I can't remember the lad's name, but then he came back over as the skinhead, and he basically literally just put out ads in punk fanzines to become a skinhead and hang out, and people started answering. And so the first skinheads were originated by Harley Flanagan in New York.
And so they just ran an ad, and then that's how they created the wow.
Yeah, and I have all the links. I got all the stories. It's corroborated from different skinhead historical accounts. Yeah, they ran ads in punk fanzines, and it started in New York, and I don't know where it went from there, but it was California, Chicago, so on and so forth. And originally, skinheads weren't intended to be racist. It was like a blue-collar scooter thing, oi music, but it did mutate into a racist organization. And Miles Mathis actually has a guest writer named Kevin who did some work on the skinhead origination in the UK and manufactured fascism, and it's quite fascinating. And I've posted that on my blog site to corroborate a story I'm completing on Harley Flanagan.
Yeah, Miles is cranking out some great work lately.
Yeah, and his guest writers are doing some good work too. So we have another vanguard of our, one of many vanguards punk's going to bring, skinheads, Krishna hardcore. We find, when you sit and think about that for a moment, you think, well, actually, let me digress. So,
well, the Hare Krishnas shave their heads, and then you have the skinheads.
Yeah, and just kind of to blur a little bit here, again, the skinheads originally weren't racist, but they did turn into racist skinheads. And doing analysis of Harley's tattoos, I saw a tattoo on his shoulder of the number 18, and that is directly a racist reference to Adolf Hitler because it's the first and the 8th letter AH. So Harley eventually mutates into getting a tattoo representing white power, white pride, or whatever faction. Okay, so we have this guy who's known Ginsberg since he was 1. He is in a Krishna band. He's the first American skinhead. And when I thought and pondered about that, the instant symbology was theosophy. if you think about theosophy, it has swastikas, the Aum. I mean, it's it's basically, he is like.
If you want to stop sharing your screen while you're talking there, that might help a little bit. And then just click it each time you're speaking. Or yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So we see, you know, or when I put my mind to it, and I just think of those dualities of Krishna and racist skinheads, theosophy symbolism pops into my mind, and that we know is intelligence-fronted wizardry. You know, it's got its intelligence front as well. So it might be some type of intentional manifestation of theosophy that Ginsberg participated in. I'm totally speculating there, but I mean, that's the polarization of those two things, Krishna and skinheads, again, are mind-blowing to me.
It's very logical. Do you? Well, let me just say that that's a really good research connecting Ginsberg into the punk movement. Was that individual the only trajectory from Ginsberg into the origin of the punk movement that you found?
No, but he's the most important and fascinating one. No, definitely not.
Now, let me just say here that Ginsberg was friends with, Chogyam Trungpa influenced Ginsberg, and Trungpa was pals with the Dalai Lama. Of course, the Dalai Lama is the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. He's a big... as far as I recall, he's a big theosophist, or I might be confusing him with. Yeah,
it's not the Dalai.
Yeah, that's
Gandhi's the theosophist.
Gandhi, isn't it? Yeah, Gandhi was the theosophist.
Yeah.
And I dissected Gandhi in this research somehow too. Like, it ended up in the research. So I've learned quite a bit about Gandhi and nationalist Hinduism, and Gandhi's assassin was a cross-dresser. Like, I learned all this crazy stuff doing punk rock research. So back to Harley. We got some really big nuggets still coming up.
Why don't you share the screen again while you're going through them?
So with Harley, we want to analyze his mother, Rosebud Filou Patet. And we find that she was basically like a groupie with the New York Dolls. She hung out at the factory with Andy Warhol. She was a groupie with the Fugs, the Velvet Underground. But she was also spiritual wife to Harry Everett Smith. So now I just want to remind you that this Rosebud is Harley Flanagan's mother. So we have this family as his spiritual wife connected to Harry Everett Smith, first Skinhead, first Krishna bands, and Allen Ginsberg. And I mean, it can't get any more blatant that the Cro-Mags and Harley Flanagan lived
and then Harry Everett Smith was a big Crowleyite. Basically, the whole music industry, as Hans and I have shown, is based on this guy, Harry Everett Smith. He's the one that put together the folk music collection for the Smithsonian Institute, Anthology of American Folk Music. He's one of the original beatniks, which, of course, ties right back to Allen Ginsberg and the whole gang.
Yeah, and there's actually David Johansen, also known, I think, as Buster Poindexter on Saturday Night Live. He was in the New York Dolls, and he started a band called David Johansen and the Harry Smiths. And that was directly tribute to Harry Everett Smith. Yeah, so, you know, and that guy was in the music. He was in the band for Saturday Night Live in the 80s, David Johansen. So yeah, like right there out of the gate, I can take us on a little tour from Ginsberg to an incredibly, you know, I kind of feel bad. I can't imagine that this young man being exposed to Ginsberg from the age of 1 with occultists and a groupie mother came out of this well. And if you look at his life now, like within the last 5 years, he went to a show where his old band Cro-Mags played, and they wouldn't let him play in the band even though he's the founder. And there was a stabbing, like he stabbed somebody and somebody stabbed him back. So, I mean, these guys are probably a little older than me. I'm 44, and they're stabbing each other still. Just to clean this up and just give another spook link, Harley's cleaned his act up. He's, for a couple years, he's authored a few books, and he also happens to be a mixed martial artist trained by the Gracies, but he also trains Anthony Bourdain's kids in mixed martial arts. And Anthony Bourdain has some pretty spooky leads. So in all corners, in all reaches, we find red flags from this one little rabbit hole off of Ginsberg. So that's in a nutshell, that's where we're going to open with there. Ginsberg had a lot of a relationship with another factory member named B.B. Hansen, and B.B. Hansen is the mother of Beck, and they're all generational Scientologists. Let's see here. Okay, James Harper Grohl. This is a fun one. James Harper Grohl is the father of Dave Grohl, and Dave Grohl was in a punk band in Washington, D.C., which is exploding with red flags that I've documented. But he was originally in a punk band from D.C., but now he's in one of the greatest bands on earth, allegedly, and it's the Foo Fighters. He's the lead man for the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl. So going back to his dad, his dad was assistant his dad was a Republican. I'm going to start there. And his dad was an assistant to Robert A. Taft Jr. after he got out of media. Now, if we follow the Taft bloodline up, we go from Robert A. Taft Jr. to Robert A. Taft.
Right, to Skull and Bones.
To the founder of Skull and Bones.
Right.
And so James Harper Grohl, just to get back on track, talks about getting hit on by Allen Ginsberg when he was younger. And goes on, and he's working with conservatives. So when you find out why he's getting hit on by Ginsberg, it's because he was a part of the hippies for a while. So this hippie guy flipped it, became a conservative with the bloodline of Skull and Bones families. They have a son, goes to a DC punk band. He starts the Foo Fighters, and that's, again, like, according to the world, allegedly, and TV reports, that's like one of the biggest bands in the world right now for pop entertainment.
And of course, that comes through Nirvana, which was so seminal to the grunge movement. So
yeah, well, and of course, Nirvana was Kurt Cobain, and then we're right back to Hank Harrison.
Right back to.
Hey, Hank, you're probably watching tonight. Good to talk to you, Hank.
Yeah, because he was Hank Harrison was the father of Courtney Love, who was Cobain's wife, and and then of course Harrison was the manager and a handler of the Grateful Dead at the beginning of their career.
The first 6 months or so, yeah.
Right, and he's the one who made the slip and disclosed the fact that the band.
Why don't we get rid of the share screen while we're talking there?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That the band was from Masonic families. And see, this is why your research into Dave Grohl is absolutely fascinating and really good work. I'm very impressed with this, because you now have Skull and Bones, these secret societies that are at the root of all of these bizarre cultural debasing music phenomena. Now to show that Skull and Bones is at the root of Nirvana and the Foo Fighters, and to show that Masonic families are producing, the Grateful Dead, which is also, of course, connected into Bohemian Grove and MK Ultra and all the other things. I mean, you just, at a certain point, have such a clear picture that even the most mind-numb, and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense, this is just the condition that we live in, but everyone can see that we've been the victim of a organized plot. I mean, at some point, it just becomes self-evident. You go, well, this is not circumstance. What you're looking at is a generational structure of people who are trying to take society into a debased condition. And of course, the purpose is to make us easier to control.
Absolutely. And Hank Harrison's made my database. And oh yeah. And well, the thing is, it doesn't stop with Hank Harrison. Like, we find out if you analyze Courtney Love's family history, she's a direct descendant to Douglas Fairbanks Jr., member of the Pilgrim Society.
Right.
So it goes farther than Hank Harrison, but Hank Harrison's just like the puppet. But behind the scenes, a couple levels, we got the Fairbanks family related to Courtney Love.
And of course, Masonic. Can you do me a favor?
And Hank, if you're watching, we don't mean any insults. But
we're hoping to have Hank on the show, which we have communications with Hank from time to time, which are very fruitful, but then somehow always end, and we can't quite get him to come forward and get him.
Right. But I mean, yeah, I've got probably a dozen emails.
Incidentally, and we want to not only to Hank, who I like and have enjoyed the communication, but like people like Dave Grohl, anyone who is that we're bringing into the analysis that feels that they're somehow being misrepresented by showing them as part of this web. For heaven's sakes, come to the show. We're perfectly happy to have you come on the show, Dave and Courtney. You'll be permitted to come on, and Hank. And we'll be happy to talk with you about this and let you tell your side of the story and explain how these circumstances were simply accidental. But anyway, Nina, you've absolutely made my day. I've always wondered about David Grohl because of his screaming. His songs, they'll be kind of going along in this, numbing sort of, drone, and then all of a sudden he'll start screaming at the top of his lungs, and he just screams for it, and then he'll quiet down, and they start screaming again. It's just, and this kind of staccato, which always has the scream. I've thought, that really strikes me as like a kind of conditioning. I just don't believe this is music. And so now that you've rooted him in Skull and Bones, you've made my day, because at least I can listen to these songs now and know where they're coming from. Thank you.
Hey, you know what? I want to segue for a moment, just because I want to make sure that he gets included in the first segment, because everybody's going to be sitting there, oh, well, Jello Biafra, he's got to be free of all of this stuff. So I did see Jello Biafra in your database a second ago. You got any dirt on that guy?
Let me pull him up here. And just to keep going on Grohl real quick, because I have an excellent.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
He during the Kerry campaign, he actually dedicated an album to him and went on tour proselytizing Kerry. And if you really just pause for a minute, he was proselytizing the liberal Skull and Bones against the conservative Skull and Bones as a rock star. So these punkers aren't anti-establishment or ex-anti-establishment. They are the establishment.
Right. I mean, they're anti-establishment as long as you don't cross the line of Skull and Bones, because they're.
And for those who don't know, John Kerry and George W. Bush were both Skull and Bones. So making a tribute to John Kerry is a tribute to Skull and Bones. Sorry to interject.
Oh, that's fine. And
let's get back to Dave Grohl. So what else do you have on that lab?
Go ahead and share screen, and you had Jello Biafra right on the left of him.
I want to understand these people.
Okay. Again, I can rabbit hole for days until I'll hijack the conversation, but if you're cool, I'm cool.
Go ahead.
We have 25 minutes you can hijack.
All right, so sharing screen. I'm sorry I'm bad at this, guys.
Down at the bottom, you hover mouse over share screen and just click the button. There you go.
Got it. Well, the the hugest links are going to be he has his relationship to Kathleen Hanna, and she's basically the spearhead for third wave feminism through Riot Girl, and that comes directly out of Evergreen State College. And DC as well. DC had its hand in pumping the Riot Girl movement through another group of individuals called Positive Force. And so Dave Grohl dated Kathleen Hanna for a long time. Currently now she's with Ad Rock from the Beastie Boys. and they're completely manufactured New York punk rappers. But yeah, the Kathleen Hanna link is extremely thick and thorough because of the Evergreen State College connection. And again, Kathleen Hanna, she's kind of like, as I've learned from you guys, the term lifetime actor, where she has this background and history that seems to justify her feminism, but it's also directly opposing feminism. So she's been raped a few times, I think at least twice, and she goes into that. She's they're the pro-abortion people, so they always wear the coat hanger shirts. These Riot Girl bands actually have Planned Parenthood as like a co-opt. And if you go to a show, which I've not, but I know they're out there, if you go to a show with these Riot Girl bands, Planned Parenthood will have a booth, an actual booth set up at these shows, and they'll have banners saying we support Planned Parenthood.
They don't sound very family friendly.
Yeah. Yeah. And spinning off of
trying to destroy the family.
Absolutely, and I'm that's why I wanted to substantiate your guys' thesis. I think this might be the spearhead right here. I think Truck is the spearhead.
Wow.
It gets hairy. But back to Kathleen, you know, she was influenced by Gloria Steinem, and allegedly she saw Gloria Steinem when she was a child, and her mom took her to like a feminist rally or whatnot. So she references Gloria Steinem. She references the Red Stockings, which were CIA infiltrated or CIA ran, depending on whose version you believe. And Steinem was doing work with Zbigniew Brzezinski, doing revolutionary work with Zbigniew Brzezinski. I found that out about Gloria Steinem. Let me try and find that quote here. Yeah, so Red Stocking Collective. Oh, that's not it. Sorry, guys. Yeah, other participants in that effort included a youthful Zbigniew Brzezinski and future Washington Post reporter Walter Pincus. So she was doing radical action with Zbigniew Brzezinski.
That was the beginning of the color revolutions. That was where that whole technique came from. It was the youth festivals that the CIA ran in these different European countries. That Gloria Steinem was one of their key agents, which she was caught being, and then came up with this story that, well, the CIA is a great liberal organization. You know, this was when MK Ultra is doing, you know, chemical lobotomies and keeping people in a coma for a month to erase their mind. I mean, you just want to pull your hair out when you hear this stuff. It's just horrible, and I'm really glad that you've created the database so people can use it now to see the connections to these individuals and to understand, you know, what we're being.
Yeah, just so you know, his database is still private. He hopes to get the full edition soon. This is the free.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's another.
Oh, wow. Debbie Harry there too.
Yeah, Debbie Harry is a fan of Gloria Steinem, and they both were Playboy bunnies, like feminist Playboy bunnies. See, that's a complete irony. But
right.
You hear her tell it. She was like undercover to find out, you know, how poorly women are being treated. But I think it's just part of the programming. I think Hugh Hefner just had his turn, you know, and it's just part of like the progression through the system that these sick people have to go through.
Well, and also, I mean, promoting women being called as animals, like a bunny. You know, yeah. This was a grown-up version of the Mouseketeer, you know, by Walt Disney. You know, and so we can see the generational progression. People wanting, you know, to get any understanding of Disney, just research the Uplifters, the club in Santa Monica that had as its title Uplifting Lucifer. This was the title of the organization, and you know, contained people like Frank Baum and G. Gordon Liddy's father. And so then Disney goes on to, you know, found the Magic Kingdom with the Club 33, the obvious Masonic, you know, restaurant. You know, and then he has the gall to like claim that he's some kind of a Christian. What kind of a Christian like is in a club called Uplifting Lucifer? You know, what kind of a Christian has Club 33 with all the Masonic symbolism?
Well, let's, you know, Joe, let's not forget that Walt Disney was funded to create Disneyland the same time that MK Ultra was funded. And, none other than SRI did Disney's research for Disneyland. And SRI, of course, is behind MK Ultra.
Yeah, it's just one project. And so when you pick up Steinem, as Nino has done, and Debbie Harry as bunnies, you're in the next generation of debasement where sexualization and animal character, calling them animal names is now just normalized. It starts out with the Mouseketeers, it's cute and innocent in the next generation. And then, of course, beyond this, then you get into where they call them punks, right? So now you're really debasing because it's, you go from the Mouseketeer to the bunny, and now they're punks. And I'm glad that Nino brought out that collection of definitions, and Jan, you too. I mean, I hadn't actually, I kind of was aware of it, but that really made it clear that the reason that they named it the punks is because the word stemmed from basically a homosexual slave in prison, right? So that's really what is in back of this name. It's another basically animal name for a group of humans that they're trying to push us down further and further into, before the transhumanism occurs, we lose all humanity, but we just get pushed further and further down each generation with, this descent of language and terminology. And Nino, this is great that you've exposed this, and I hope that you would are able to make the database public. I think that's really be a useful thing for people to have.
That's a goal. It would be an honor and kind of very fulfilling to have it attached to the super brain if it ever comes to being. Like that would be an excellent signature.
That's what we got to do. This is something I've been talking with a lot of people this week about this, that we really need to expand the sort of brain technology so that everyone uses it as a way of understanding everything that comes our way. All news stories you should be trying to place them into a super brain. And then beyond that,
and then that way you have a background just before you even start reading an article from somebody. You can see the background of the person that wrote it.
And that's why Jan's work is really, to be praised on the highest level, because this has really started a process that can help thinking everywhere. And then beyond that, we've got to kind of create our own words. They are always creating words, and with them they can create, they can control the narrative. We need to create a vocabulary set for basically the kind of open source journalism that we are trying to do. Our journalism is different than the propaganda and the mind control of CNN and Fox News and the Disney Corporation. What we're trying to do is to show people the way to get to the truth. And so our vocabulary should reflect that, so that as we go through our process of trying to figure out what's going on, we have a way of describing, the open source nature. We're not trying to dominate. We're trying to present facts. We're not trying to give sort of a propaganda spin. We're trying to show a process by which the better truth can be reached, And so anyway, it's all kind of swirling around. I know I'm not really making much sense, but it's just that I think that the brain and a new vocabulary set is kind of where we want to head in a few years, have this done where the new words like lifetime actor can fit into that,
Suggestogen, you have another one.
Yeah, exactly. See, so, and then the process of thinking that open source, permits, so that everyone who comes into the process has words to describe where they are in the process, okay, this is the beginning of the search, and these are the categories of citation, because with the brain you can move around so fast, and of course with the internet and all the other tools. So anyway, I think that even though we may seem small, in fact, Nino, the three of us are mighty in the sense that we're at the beginning of a mighty movement. We're at the beginning of a mighty process where everyone's going to think better and then not be able to be conditioned and made into punks
Yeah, where the intelligence community becomes impotent, essentially.
Exactly. Yeah, and the propaganda can't work because the people have their whole way of thinking just destroys it.
Absolutely. Well, and we still have some other topics. Did you? We still didn't hit on Jello Biafra. Do you have anything on him? What else? Who else can we expose while we have time here? We should also probably hit Henry Lawrence Garfield Rollins, and
That's a beast. I mean, I've dredged so much stuff that it's. I mean, literally, I have months worth of talks. But yeah, I'll go ahead with Jello.
Right, go ahead and share screen again.
Jello, I don't have too much in the database. I have a different set of notes just because it's an ongoing process and a lot of work. But let me get it up here.
Eric Boucher.
Yep.
UC Santa Cruz. He's up in the right area. Green Party, Butthole Surfers, Dead Kennedys. I mean, yeah, listen to that. I mean, we're talking about the whole gay agenda being sold via Ginsburg and Burroughs, et cetera. I mean, what kind of name for a band is Butthole Surfers, really?
Yeah, it's sad.
So with Ginsburg, do you guys see my brain? Yeah, you see my brain. With Jello.
I understand part of it. I don't know why I'm not seeing it's like pixelated or distorted.
Can you turn it off and reload it because somehow the screen? Yeah.
Or just click something. Yeah, there you go.
And now bring it back.
There you go.
Okay. So just to try and knock out a couple birds here.
We just lost half the screen again. I don't know what you got over it or something there, but just click in it. Click in your database. No, you have something, a window on the left side. Get rid of that window there. You're screwing it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to read notes from it because that's kind of, it hasn't.
All right, yeah, don't click out of there.
So I'm going to try and go from memory here. I'm going to go a little bit from memory here. But so with Jello, you find a very intimate relation with Tim Leary. And we all know about Tim Leary. We also find that there was this talk, and that's why I wanted my notes. I can't remember the name of it. Actually, I'm just going to pull up my email, and I'll share this screen because it lists names. So bear with me, guys, because I can't remember the good stuff. So stop share.
If you're sharing a monitor rather than just one window, then you don't have to skip back and forth like that.
All right. Do you see that?
I can see it. Yeah.
Okay. So Timothy Leary had a reading with Jello Biafra with William Burroughs, Allen Ginsberg, Marianne Faithfull, and this was the River City reunion. That says a lot right there. Then you got some other.
Look, yeah, I didn't know he was tied to Billy Idol too. Jeez.
Oh, yeah, and yeah, so yeah, here's a lot of the links. Actually, these links come from a partner researcher named Masonic Youth. He's part of my blog as well, so that's why I had to pull it out of the email here. But yeah, so he was part of that. Leary consulted with Billy Idol. Leary played the father in a suicidal tendencies video. He also worked with new wave band Devo in their home video. And he also, this is a kind of a fun one, he made a cameo appearance in Stuff, which was directed by Johnny Depp and Gibson Haynes about the Red Hot Chili Peppers, John Frusciante. Now, Gibby Haynes is in the Butthole Surfers. I just want to throw that out there.
Didn't John Frusciante come to he died of a heroin overdose or something?
Yeah, it's a drug death.
Right, and that's an example of how this is organized to debase. I mean, first of all, when you have
get rid of the share screen there.
Okay. Well, we call a band de-evolution. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. But then, when you glorify the drug death, that's really a behavioral suggestion to a generation, right? The beautiful drug death of people like Morrison, Joplin, Jimi Hendrix, all the Foo Fighters. The Foo Fighter would lose a band member every tour. It seemed like, they'd have to keep replacing, because they'd always have these these heroin overdoses, and then they would talk about the heroin overdose of the lead singer who came back to life and things like this. Okay, it is possible that this is just circumstantial. I doubt it. I think that actually when you look at it in the context of what we've shown with MK Ultra and how they're influencing society, guys, we've got to look at this as just another one of the debasing elements. They're basically just putting an idea, trying to get it past the consciousness that, that really drugs, suicide, die young, these are all positive things. This really bothers me because I think that, it weighs on young people so much because so many of them are having hard times as it is just because society is so difficult to find a path in these days. Family is so hard to create. Then to put these ideas out there deliberately is just, these are, psychopaths. They're basically engaging in warfare, and they're trying to cause people to kill themselves.
Absolutely. It's and the web, again, I can spider this web out for eons. I'm going to share a screen real quick. This is just going to be on Gibby Haynes, just to show you another example of how stuff just gets out of control. So with Gibby Haynes, we find his dad is Jerry Haynes, and Jerry Haynes was he was on television in Texas, and he was a graduate of Yale, was in the Air Force, Louisiana State. And he was on the television in Texas, and he was a children's show presenter named Mr. Peppermint, and it was on WFAA. And what makes Mr. Haynes pretty unique is through his career of being Mr. Peppermint, when Kennedy was assassinated, he switched gears and became one of the very first people, if not the very first, one of the very first people to bring the JFK assassination into the lexicon through the television set through news. So I think that's an incredibly odd coincidence when we also think, going on another tangent, that Ian McKay's dad was in the actual motorcade of the JFK assassination. Ian McKay from Fugazi, Minor Threat out of D.C. His dad was in the press bus of the JFK assassination. We find that John Peel, and he's a record producer from England, but he's intimately attached to the punk scene. He was down there, and he has pictures of himself. He's captured in images, historic images of the JFK, like court trials. So we have punkers peppered and punk fathers peppered into the JFK assassination. We also have a relationship with, I think his name's Phil Graham, and that is a descendant that one of the Talking Heads married into, and Graham actually talked Kennedy into taking LBJ as his running mate, and also committed suicide after the fact. So we got punk pepperings through history and all over the place, and that's just another tunnel I can go down.
And that's really important because when you look at the background, when you see things like Skull and Bones and you see all of these connections into the halls of power and wealth, then the idea that there would suddenly be a generation that would decide to produce punk, that just is so non sequitur. This wouldn't be what these people with their backgrounds would be doing unless it was something that was organized.
Absolutely. And I have military connections for days. I have conspiracy connections for days. Again, it's so hard to cover in an hour, and I we knew we were going to, basically make it difficult to cover all your connections. In fact, probably would take, years to really go through the whole thing. But I think that, in a short period of time like this, we've done a really good job of getting people to begin to see the connections that a group that was organized, then did produce the punk scene.
Yeah, I think people would be critical, and it would behoove them to begin to see these patterns and how first it was the 60s counterculture, then it was the 70s cocaine era, and the 70s and 80s punk scene, etc. I mean, each of these, the rocker scene, the burner scene, each of these are merely military uniforms that the government has created. They've created the soldiers for each one. They created them and MI6, etc., created the punk scene. They populate it. They send out letters, or advertisements for skinheads to join them, etc. And we see this recruitment and then this, passing out of uniforms like they were privates joining the army. It's no different. And once people begin to grasp this, we should be able to then look at any genre of music, whether it be reggae or punk or rock or, trance, house, EDM music, emo, goth, whatever the case may be, and begin to see that this is all manufactured from top down in every instance.
Right. Exactly. Well said, Jan. And also that the media, the Project Mockingbird media, the media which is part of the operation, then puts these images in front of us like Woodstock and the punk scene and the Foo Fighters. Suddenly they become these huge stories for some reason, right? As if there wasn't other components to the reality on the planet, but no, they have to cover these particular individuals. They just, you can't get away from them, and their stories, their music, and their, are just constantly reinforcing the debasement that, as you pointed out, the uniform that they wear, the lifetime actor role that they have is designed, to hurt us with.
Well, the leader is the lifetime actor. It's the Pied Piper, literally. Yeah. And then they get all of these people to put on the uniform. They're the generals, and they get all the plebes to put on the uniform and follow them along. And they destroy our children and our families in the process, because clearly they are afraid of any family challenging their power. So if they can destroy the family, the backbone of society, and if they can institute this socialist mom on welfare feminist society, then they have total control, and they win Huxley's final revolution.
Well, it's just they can use Eros as the technique, to get the mind control into place, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And so when Nino plugs in this research, right, that shows all these relationships, then that fits really naturally into this vast structure of, what basically can only be called warfare, psychological warfare against the people by the secret society. They are trying to break us down. It's deliberate, and we have to learn how to think in the right way so that we can defend ourselves against the control, the mind control, and all the other elements that are negative.
It'd be great if, they always used to pass out these little flyers of all this stuff for these bands and everything. I mean, like, what if, for the punk concerts, we put on Nino and Mark Devlin and John Adams stuff, and mine and Han stuff, and your stuff for the Grateful Dead, et cetera. When they have these concerts, have people out there.
That's exactly right. And you know what we should do? We should just find one of those venues and set up a coffee table.
It's like Gloria Steinem was marching in Washington, D.C. How hilarious would it have been if we were out there this week with signs saying Gloria Steinem is CIA?
Right. I mean,
but see, from this angle, now we can actually get in front of the agents and whatever they're doing.
Yeah, we can get in front and show people, head off, hopefully, the influence. But I honestly think this is people who listen to the show and are inspired. I mean, a coffee table is a powerful weapon, folks. You just bring one of those coffee tables with flyers, and I'm sure Nino, Jan, and myself will help you prepare them. In fact, if you're close by, I'm sure one of us will even make a guest appearance at the table and just set it up and hand out the flyers to the people in line. I mean, the First Amendment's still in operation. Let's make advantage of it. We'll just sit there, pass out the flyers, and go, okay, well, here's what the music is, right? This is where it comes from. These are who these people are. This is what's happening to you. This is what they're doing to you.
Nino, do you have a website?
I just started a blog. It's fourhorsesasses.blogspot.com, and that stands for Four Horses Asses of the Apocalypse. And it's myself and 3 other friends of Hoaxbusters that kind of reached out to me, and John is one of them. And I just started a blog. I have no idea exactly what I'm going to do with this data. I know I want to share it and corroborate people's research.
All right.
So yeah, I started a blog. Juvenile.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, brother, so much
we'll have to get you back on. Joe, we're past time. Joe, Caesar's Messiah.
CaesarsMessiah.com. Hit the donate button. Jan, how do they get a hold of you?
Gnostic Media, gnosticmedia.com. Hit the donate button. We can't do it without your support. Thanks, everybody. See you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye, Nino. Talk to you soon.
Yep. See ya.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Take care.
You.
All right, thank you, sir. Joe's gone like always. I will catch you guys next time. We'll have to set up some more shows on the punk scene, Nino. Sorry you didn't get more out, but as you said, it's only an hour.
Yeah, and if you give me a little time, I can build something amazing to your
Yeah. What we need to do is make sure that we're using the databases the same too. Like I have parents always above, children below type of thing.
Yeah. Relatives
and cousins and brothers and sisters to the side.
I'm learning my mistakes now.
We should get consistent on all that. But on the webs, I'll send it to you in an email. Anyway, we'll get off here, and I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys.
Later.
Thank you.
If we want to change the world, we must first change the media. Mainstream media exists for the purposes of indoctrination and manipulation of public perception. The world of free and independent media is growing, and with the upsurge in information now available in the public domain, it has never been easier to access free and independent media. The exploration of this information resulted in an experimental project which would provide a fully supported space for researchers, whistleblowers, and seekers of all kinds to express themselves and educate the world. On the 1st of January 2015, Conscious Consumer Network was launched to the world. Nobody thought we would make it this far, but CCN is the longest running free and independent media network of its kind. CCN is a unique collaboration of hearts and souls, bringing you information from different perspectives to educate and inform. Since we started CCN, we have had only one desire: the pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world, and this has not changed. Having overcome many challenges over the last 2 years, CCN is here to stay, and we've got great things lined up for 2017. Help keep CCN on the air by supporting the 2017 Network Support Fund.